Hello, everyone. Hey.
Hi.
Good morning and welcome to 5th grade history.
Hi.
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 Hello. It's awesome to see all of you. Go ahead and make sure to keep yourself muted unless you are actually answering a question or contributing to the class discussion. That would be awesome. Super appreciate it. Before we get started with our normally planned curriculum, I thought it would be kind of fun to start class with this super fun book. Oh, yikes. So this is history's grossest, wackiest moments. So as we're waiting for all of our friends to roll in, we'll start here. This little blurb is about Attila and the Huns. So, how do you like your meat cooked? Broiled, grilled, medium rare? Well, here's a dandy Hun cooking idea that adds new meaning to the words rump roast. Okay, so you take a slab of raw meat, get a horse, remove the saddle, put the meat on the horse where the saddle should go. Then mount that sirloin and gallop for 6 or 7 hours. When the meat is squishy from the pounding that your bottom has just provided, it'll be ready to eat. No need to cook, just take a bite. After all, it's warm. Ugh. Can you imagine? So that is how the Huns would cook their meat. Instead of riding on a saddle, they would ride on these like slabs of raw meat for 6 or 7 hours until it was like squishy and almost hot to the touch. So it's almost lunchtime. I hope I didn't spoil your appetite too much. All right, everybody. So we have been discussing what happened to the world right after World War II. And as we've seen, unfortunately, it wasn't a time of peace and prosperity. There was a lot of issues. A lot of countries actually, boom, almost immediately started fighting in new wars, just on smaller, more localized scales. Jasmine, do you have a question? Go for it.
Are we learning about World War II, or what are we learning about?
We are going to be learning about Korea today. So this is going to be right after World War II, kind of what happened in Korea. Before we jump in though, let's remember, what are some of the other countries we've been talking about? Even like last class, which country were we in? Christiana. You gotta unmute yourself. So
Vietnam.
Vietnam, exactly, awesome. What happened in Vietnam is we had, again, the people who live in Vietnam, many people say, okay, West, okay, Europe, get out of our space, we're gonna do our own thing. But then what ended up happening is the country was split in two. We saw India split apart into India and Pakistan. We saw in the Middle East, 2 new countries. We had Israel and then Palestine separate. In South Africa, we had 2 competing groups for power. In what other countries have we looked at? Anybody?
Germany.
Germany, yes, thank you. Again, East and West, the splitting up. Knowing all of that, what do you imagine we might be learning about happens in Korea today?
The splitting up.
Oh, you totally got it. That's right. Today we're going to do again about a post-World War II conflict that ends up in a country being divided.
Do you have to take notes?
Yes, you do, but we'll do that after. While we're reading, I really just want us to focus on reading because there's a lot of information. And then afterwards, we're going to do an outline together to make sure everybody has kind of the clear, big picture ideas in their head. And for those of you who participated in our class discussion from last time, so good. I love the examples you gave. Really solid stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up the text. Some of you might have this book at home. If you do, fabulous. Go ahead and use it. And if not, then I will have it here for everybody, so no worries.
It's Jasmine.
Yes.
I was just wondering, what's the Google Classroom code?
Don't worry about Google Classroom. That is actually going to be changing a little bit. So
Okay.
now I'll give you information as you need it.
Okay.
Miss Jasmine,
Yes.
this is about Google Classroom, but I just had a really quick question.
Sure.
It says, I just wanted to make sure this was on purpose. It says that you've archived the class.
Yes. We're going to be
Okay.
kind of shifting over. So don't worry about it.
Okay, I was wondering if I did something wrong.
No,
Okay,
you are
thank
all good. Great question. All right. So can everyone see the text on the screen? Give me a thumbs up or a clappy hands. Yes. Oh, I'm seeing some awesome thumbs up. Yes. Fabulous.
Yeah, I got it.
You got it. Yay. All right.
Yeah, I have it. I see it.
So what we're going to do is we're going to read through the chapter together. I'll probably read the majority of it, but if I call on you, I would love for you to jump in and read a paragraph. That sound good?
Miss Jasmine, I have a question.
Yes.
So it said that last class that lunch was from 11:45 to
This
like
class is going to go
12:10.
until noon today.
Okay.
Yeah,
And then when's our lunch break?
at noon.
Okay.
Thanks for being flexible, you guys. All right, here we go. So, in the years after World War II, the Soviet Union did its best to draw other countries into communism, while the United States grew more and more worried about this spreading change.
Wait. What page is it? Sorry.
Yeah, so this is chapter 33,
What
so
page?
367.
Okay, thanks.
And that
Keep
makes
going.
sense, right? Okay, so let's mute yourself again. Thank you.
Sorry.
So that makes sense. That's the struggle that we've seen. Like in China, we had Kai-shek saying, we want democracy, and we had Mao saying, no, we want communism. What ended up happening, Kai-shek and the people for democracy went to Taiwan, while mainland China became communist. That's in the same thing in Vietnam. We had some people wanting a democracy, other people wanting, with Ho Chi Minh wanting communism. So that tension is all over the place. During World War II, the United States had not been nearly as worried about the USSR. The possibility that Nazis might take control of Europe and that the Japanese soldiers might seize all of Asia had seemed much more threatening than the chance the Soviets might convince other countries to become communists, right? One issue at a time here, people. But now Germany and Japan were defeated. The Soviet Union was claiming other countries for itself. The enormous country of China was communist. So was the northern half of Vietnam and the eastern half of Germany. The country of Korea would become the next place where communism and democracy collided. When Japan surrendered in 1945, and why did Japan surrender? Somebody unmute themselves and answer.
Because the U.S. we bombed them.
Yeah, the two atomic bombs, that was the final straw in the war. Thank you, Jasmine.
It destroyed them.
It absolutely.
There was
obliterated.
one bomb in Hiroshima and one bomb in Nagasaki.
Perfect. Great job, you guys. So we'll keep going here. That was in 1945. The Japanese were forced to give up the land that they had seized during World War II. But what about Korea? Korea wasn't part of the original land of Japan. On the other hand, it had been a part of the Japanese Empire since 1910, well before World War I. Korea had been ruled by Japan for so long that it had no Korean government left that could step up and run the country once the Japanese were gone. Korean officials would have to learn how to govern their own land. And hundreds of thousands of Japanese, many of whom had lived in Korea for 20 years or more, had to move back to Japan. The United States and the Soviet Union decided to divide up the responsibility for slowly giving Korea back its independence. For convenience, they agreed to split the country in two. Well, that sounds familiar. They drew an imaginary line right at the 38th parallel, the line of latitude that ran roughly across the middle of the country. North of the 38th parallel, the Japanese troops would surrender to the Soviets, and south of the 38th parallel, they would surrender to the American troops. If this sounds arbitrary, it was. There wasn't anything particularly distinctive about the 38th parallel. In the United States, you can find the 38th parallel on a map if you draw a line from Charlottesville, Virginia on the East Coast straight across to Stockton, California on the West Coast. This division was arbitrary as saying that everyone above the line would speak one language and everyone below it another. No one had yet figured out that partitioning off countries into smaller pieces didn't work very well. And we totally saw that in India, right? Even though they divided up the Muslims and the Hindus, there was still a lot of conflict. And the Americans and the Soviets began to distrust each other very soon. The division of Korea was supposed to be temporary, but by 1948, neither the US nor the Soviet Union was willing to move out of Korea. Each was sure that the other country would immediately grab power. So instead of helping Korea return to independence, the Soviet Union decided to set up a communist government in the north of Korea, the People's Republic of North Korea. Sounds a lot like the People's Republic of China with Mao. It was led by a Korean soldier named Kim Il-sung, who had served in the Soviet army. Jasmine, do you mind reading that next paragraph?
Am I unmuted? Okay. Down in the South of Korea, a different country formed. The President of the United States, Harry S. Truman, appealed to the United States for help. Even though American soldiers were occupying the country, and the United Nations agreed to give South Korea a hand in holding its own elections. In August of 1948, the Southern Republic of Korea had its first elections. A Korean politician named Syngman Rhee became president. Rhee was friendly to the United States. As a matter of fact, he lived in America. He had even earned a PhD at Princeton University in New Jersey.
Awesome, thank you. Can I please have Grace? Can you read that next paragraph for me? Let me unmute you. Sometimes it takes a few clicks. All right, Grace, go for it.
We're on refugees, right?
We are on but North and South Korea.
Okay. But North and South Korea were both a mess. The president of the South couldn't exactly be appointed in a free and fair election. Syngman Rhee had been very willing to look the other way while his supporters assassinated the politicians who might run against him. And in the North, the Soviet-led People's Republic of Korea was sending soldiers to silence anyone who objected from a communist country or communist government.
You can keep going. You can read that next little one, yeah.
Refugees from North Korea were flooding into South Korea at the same time. South Koreans who sympathized with communism were trying to fight their way to North Korea.
Awesome, thank you. Avalon, can you read that next one?
Do I have to?
What was that?
Do I have to?
Please, you're such a good reader. Just one paragraph.
Is it? Where are we?
In June of 1950. Everybody, please be following along.
In June of 1950, 90,000 North Korean soldiers, given all the most recent and powerful weapons by the Soviets, marched past the
past the 38th parallel and into South Korea. They brought with them 150 huge, powerful Russian tanks. The South Koreans were completely surprised. It was Saturday night, and many South Korean soldiers had gone to Japan for the weekend. Others had left their posts and gone home. Those who were still guarding the border didn't have any weapons, powerful enough to fight off the enormous Soviet tanks.
Thank you, my friend. All right. The North Korean soldiers trooped on southwards. When the United Nations learned of this invasion, its members agreed that soldiers should be sent into South Korea to help the South Koreans push the Soviet-trained North Koreans back. So, British Commonwealth soldiers and American soldiers, under the command of the American General MacArthur, were sent back into Korea. They were given the job of not just driving the North Koreans out of South Korea, but of capturing North Korea and forcing it to rejoin the South. The British and American soldiers managed to push the communist forces back past the 38th parallel and then kept marching. They managed to march so far north that they were almost up to the Chinese-Korean border. At this, the Chinese grew worried about being invaded themselves. 200 had lived in America and had even earned a PhD. 200,000 Chinese soldiers marched into Korea to push the UN forces back. Now, instead of helping Korea recover from the occupation, 4 different countries, the United States, Great Britain, the Soviet Union, and China, were fighting on Korean land. The Chinese pushed the South Korean and UN forces back across the 38th parallel again. Then the UN sent in more troops and pushed up to the 38th parallel once more. Back and forth, back and forth. A North Korean soldier named Chung Dong-kwai described an old woman who lived in a farmhouse near the 38th parallel, who cooked meals for the soldiers who came to her door. She seemed entirely unworried by the explosions and battles going on nearby. Living so close to the 38th parallel had caused her to see northern and southern soldiers take and retake her village many times, he wrote. She showed neither surprise nor fear over the fact of the latest changeover. By 1953, more than 3 million people had died in this pointless fight. Half of them were civilians who had not even been armed. Finally, after the death of Joseph Stalin, everyone involved agreed to a truce so that the Korean War would end. Korea would remain divided in 2. The North would stay the People's Republic of Korea and would be a communist nation. The South would still be the Republic of Korea with an elected president, so democracy. And the border between the 2 countries would be exactly where it had been placed at the end of World War II, almost 10 years before, right along the 38th parallel. All right. So go ahead and either unmute yourself or write in the chat, what are some big takeaways from that chapter? And I know it's like, whoa, this country got involved and then that country got involved and they're back and forth, just like the text said.
That the woman couldn't, like, she didn't really, well, this is not really like a takeaway, but she didn't really like mind or like tons of people didn't have food or died or couldn't like survive.
Yeah, I mean, war is always going to bring, and like someone else said, a lot of people died. For me, that woman's story is so interesting. So imagine that you live in the same exact spot, and one day it's like you're kind of in North Korea, and then the next day, now I'm in South Korea, now I'm in North Korea, now I'm in South Korea. Like, I'm not moving, but the politics and the lay of the land is moving around you. That would get super confusing and probably super stressful.
What day is it today?
The 19th. Was the war pointless? That's interesting. Why would you say that it was a pointless war? A lot of back and forth, absolutely. And now, what two systems of government or governing are kind of at odds with each other? And we've seen this now in Vietnam, in China, in Korea. What two different systems are we going back and forth?
Communism and Democracy.
You totally got it. Good job. And I see answers coming up there. So on the communism side, kind of the number one player, we've got the Soviet Union. And with democracy, that would be United States, Great Britain, most of the Western European countries. And they are totally at odds with each other. So now what's happening is after World War II, we've got all these brand new countries springing up everywhere. And the game, it feels like a game, the way they're playing it is, we got to get them on our side. They have to use our kind of government. Otherwise, we're gonna lose, and the other side is gonna get too powerful. So it was a series of how many countries can you get to do your system of government? All right, so what we're going to do is take some notes. So does everyone have some paper, either in a notebook or loose leaf paper, and a pen or a pencil? Very nice, awesome, you guys are fantastic. So I am going to share my screen with you again, and we are going to do an outline together.
I left my notebook downstairs. Can I go grab that really quick?
Yeah, run and go grab it. So here we are going to write some notes together. I will go ahead and type it on the screen, and I'd love for you to write it down, a hard copy. That sound good? Awesome. So first things first, you'll notice I've titled it The Korean War, because that's the chapter that we're talking about. Up here, tell me, what font am I using?
12.
Well, that's
Times
the size
New
that I'm
Roman.
using. What's the name of my font?
Times New Roman.
Times New Roman. Okay. You guys are using pen and paper right now, which is great, because that's a good way to take notes. But just so you know, as you start to type essays for school, Times New Roman, 12-point fonts, double space. Just lock that into your brain, because that is kind of the go-to standards for most essays that you're going to write. Times New Roman, it's a very clean, simple font. 12-point font, not too big, not too small, and double space.
Wait, will we have to, is it gonna be our, like, do we have to show it to you after the class is done?
Yeah, we'll have some kind of turning in system. So that's why we're all participating.
Wait, should we just show it in front of the camera?
Don't worry about that right now. We haven't even done it yet.
Wait,
Can we do it?
If you have a question, please raise your hand. Grace.
What's the date?
The 19th. Yes, with the world in the background. What's your name?
Oh, Tucker.
Tucker.
Can we, do we do it on paper or on the Chromebook?
Let's do it on pencil or pen and paper. It's better to take notes that way. It gets it locked into your brain a little bit better.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, so we are going to start with our first point here. Oh, can I not write? There we go. So I've got Roman numeral 1 is going to be North Korea's government. And this is how an outline works, right? We start with our Roman numeral, and then when we indent a little bit, it will be capital letter A. And make sure
Don't
it's a
we-
capital letter and not lowercase.
Don't we normally do this at Newport Seashore?
We do. So, the North Korean government, who helped set up that government? Which country kind of got their hands involved?
Was it Japan?
Not Japan. Grace?
The U.S. and the Soviets.
So just the North Koreans right now.
Oh, the Soviets.
Yes, fabulous. Set up by the Soviet Union. And that totally makes sense, right? Because they're a communist government. North Korea is going to be a communist government. So they're like, hey, we'll help you out. We know just what you need.
They wanted other countries to be communist, right?
Absolutely, yes. The Soviet Union under Joseph Stalin, they were looking for any opportunity there was to get other nations, especially new budding nations, to join in the communist regime. Anna Sophia, you have a question?
So, do we have to use a pencil or is it
Yes, that's been established many times now, a pen or a pencil. All right, so what did they call this new government? This new country? It's very similar. So in China, we had the People's Republic of China under Mao. And
Is it North Korea's republic?
Pretty close, pretty close. It's the People's Republic of North Korea.
Oh, of North Korea.
So, you know, a lot of times we just shorten it. We just say North Korea because it's easier. But People's Republic of North Korea is the official title. And it was led by a man named Kim Il-sung.
So this one was republic or communist?
This is communist. Wonderful question. Wonderful.
Okay.
Yes, clarification there.
But then why does it say republic?
That is an excellent question. Is it truly a republic if there's no voting and no free elections? Not really.
Then it's a communist. Then why is it called?
Grace, you have a question?
Yeah, I thought it was led by Joseph Stalin.
The Soviet Union is.
Oh, so they.
So
but
we can
they
even,
just own
and
it.
these are little things we can add. So if you have room underneath point B, you can add this. If not, then just add it in parentheses. But it is a communist country. And then here, it was led by and if you don't have room, then just like put it in parentheses next to it like that. All right, so that is North Korea, right? They are the communist part of Korea. Now we are going to talk about South Korea's government. Now, who helped set up South Korea? Any
The
ideas?
Japanese?
Not the Japanese.
America?
America was part of it. It was actually the United Nations. So United Nations, America is part of that with Great Britain. So they all kind of had a part in setting up this new government. Okay, and this is gonna get a little bit tricky, but what was the official name of South Korea?
The United Nations?
Anybody? Remember, so it's the Republic
Of
Can you say the question
Korea.
again?
The Republic of Korea.
Yes, so in the north, we have the People's Republic of North Korea, and then in the south, we have just Republic of Korea.
What's the difference?
The difference is the north is the communist regime, and the south is going to be a democracy set up by the United Nations. Yes, Tucker.
I was gonna say, should we do it in like parentheses after it, or who it was led by? When you said set up by the United Nations.
Well, the United Nations doesn't have just one single leader. So
Okay.
that's a great question. So for Republic of Korea, let's do a little sub point here and say it is is it communist?
No,
No, what is it?
it's a democracy.
Ding, ding, ding. A democracy. Fabulous. And this country was led by a man named, let's see, Sin Man Rhee.
Wait. Oh, okay.
Give you another minute to make sure you got that all those notes written down.
How many do we have of these?
You have one more point.
Okay. I always get P's and R's mixed up.
I always
It
get
happens.
these mixed up.
Those are easy for me. I just look at my name.
All right, so our third point here, we're going to talk about the North Korean invasion. So this is going to happen in June of 1950. At that point, how many years has World War II been over? You can just show me on your hand.
3? I don't know.
I see. Okay, so we're getting 3, 5. What else do we think?
20.
Show me on your hand. How many years has it been over?
Wait, this is 1950, right?
We're in 1950, yes. How many years has World War II been over? Excellent. It is 5 years, about 5 years. Can you believe that? They just fought a huge world war, and just 5 years later, another conflict already boiled over. And actually, it took less than that in Vietnam. When we read about Vietnam on Tuesday, we learned that only 1 year later, 1946, is when the conflict kind of heated up there. So these people are just living in an almost non-stop violent world. Pretty hard to imagine. So North Koreans invaded. Who did they invade? Grace.
The South Koreans.
They invaded the South Koreans. Exactly. They invaded South Korea.
And why did they invade them again?
They wanted them to be a part of the same communist government that they were setting up. So right now we've got both sides saying, hey, we should all be a democracy. No, we should all be communist. And that's kind of what's causing this conflict. It's really a battle of ideas.
May you please move your mouth so I can see?
What?
Can you move there you go, thank you.
So June 1950, the North Koreans invaded South Korea. Who was helping the North Koreans in this big invasion? What country was like, we got your back, guys. We're there for you. Finley, what do you think?
Like Russia, the Soviet Union.
You totally got it, 100%. So they were armed by the Soviets. So the Soviets were like, yeah, take all of our cool, awesome military weapons. Go for it, guys. They were supported by Stalin and the Soviets. You've got it.
Isn't
like
it the
the
Soviet
tanks.
Union?
Are you in the temple?
I am. So the Soviets, yeah, that's kind of how we would abbreviate it. We wouldn't say the Soviet Unionists. We would just say the Soviets.
Okay.
Good question.
The Soviets gave them tons of like tanks and stuff, right?
Yeah,
Wait,
and actually, whoops, if we want to go back to our text exactly, we can see.
Wait, when does this end?
So-
When does it end?
So we're not going to just start talking
12.
until I call on you.
Okay.
So if we go back to our text, we can see they brought with them 150 huge, powerful Russian tanks. Yeah, that would be pretty intense, pretty scary. So that was the North's plan. But then who came and started to help push the North Koreans back out of there, back out of the South?
The Americans.
The Americans, and who? Even bigger than just
South
America.
Korea.
Didn't British help?
Yes, that's totally right. So we have Great Britain and the US. So those countries are both a part of the United Nations. So we'll say the United Nations sent soldiers to push North Korea back. So
Back from what exactly?
back from South Korea, if you want to add that for clarity. They were divided at which parallel?
The 38?
The 38th, yes. Fabulous job. The 38th parallel. And remember, we read that it wasn't like, where should we put it? Here. Oh, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Oh, what about there? It was just like, there. It was very arbitrary. There wasn't a lot of rhyme or reason to it. That's just kind of what they settled on. So 2 countries were divided at the 38th parallel. Yes, Anna Sophia.
For number 2, I've already written down what you wrote, but Roman numeral number 2 says South Korea's government. Is that what it says for Roman numeral number 1, or did my notes just get mixed up?
The first Roman numeral is North Korea. So we talked about North
Oh,
Korea
and this.
being communist and South Korea being democracy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Give you another minute to finish up the notes here. All right, can we go to a new page now? Are we all done? I don't want to.
Second.
Okay, I don't want to rush anybody. Take your notes. Thank you for being such diligent note takers. Note takers are history makers. So you are doing yourself quite the favor here.
I think you told us that before.
I know, I'm going to tell you that again. It's very important. All right, I see some thumbs up.
Not yet.
And today, what does Korea look like? It looks about the same, right? We still have communist North Korea, and
Like
we
one
have
big happy family.
does democracy in South Korea.
Like one big happy family.
Not quite. I don't know if I would label it quite like that. But it's pretty interesting to see that these wars that were fought back then are still very applicable to our lives today. It changed the geopolitics of the world forever. All right, we are going to jump back to our class for just a second. Yay! All right, everybody. So I would love to hear either on the chat, or if you'd prefer to unmute yourself. I actually like that. I like to hear your voices. Tell me, what do you think it would have been like to live in like right next to the 38th parallel, in that area that is under so much tension?
It would
Hard.
be it'd be
We're
really
gonna do one at a
scary.
time, so wait for me to call on you. Anna Sophia.
I think it'd be a little scary, but like rough, like crazy.
I think it would be scary too. And Talia.
I think, yeah, like as you said, I think it would be hard and quite scary, and you wouldn't. It'd be kind of like you wouldn't really know what was happening. It would be a bit confusing.
I think it would be super confusing, right? And even think about back then, did they have their smartphones where they could like check the news and they could text each other and be like, hey guys, this is what's happening today? No. They had to rely on much slower forms of communication to find out whose side was doing what and what was happening in their country.
I'm not afraid to scare at you.
Kaden, what do you think?
Well, I was just thinking for the last one, maybe it would be like if you just went outside, it'd be scary just seeing bombs going left and right and up and down and houses being blown up everywhere. It's just be crazy.
Right. Now, imagine that you live above the 38th parallel, but you're like, you know what, communism, that's just not really my thing. I want to go to the south. Do you think that might be a dangerous journey? What do you think?
I think it would be dangerous.
It could totally be dangerous. You don't know what side anybody's on. Politics and
I don't have
loyalties are always shifting. And think about, remember back in India, when they broke up into India and Pakistan, what happened to some of the people who were living in the part that just became Pakistan? And maybe they were Hindu, and all of a sudden, hey, the country you're living is just for Muslims. What do they have to do?
Sneak out?
Leave.
They have to up and leave, right? Or in Germany, when they started breaking up between the East and the West. Hey, can you all mute yourselves, please? When they broke up into the East and West, what happened to some people who were on the East side but wanted to get to the West?
You had to just like leave.
Yeah, they had to leave, but could they?
It
No.
would be hard.
No, what did they do? What did they build to stop people from shifting sides?
The Berlin Wall.
The Berlin Wall, that's right. So all of these countries that are starting to break up into different pieces, it's gonna get harder and harder for people to go back and forth effortlessly. So they're putting up walls and barriers, and there's just no way for people to get back and forth easily, which is going to separate a lot of families and separate a lot of friends from each other. And that's what these kind of conflicts do, that just keep breaking us up and apart. They were like, well, we can't get along, so we're just going to separate, and there's going to be no communication. Good, yeah, very nice. The Great Wall of China, another famous wall, right? Keeping people out, keeping people in.
The borders keep people out.
Mm-hmm.
Does the Great Reef? No.
Great.
The Great Barrier Reef.
Not quite. That is more of a naturally occurring phenomenon in the ocean, not built by humans to keep people out or keep people in or divide countries from each other.
Yeah.
The border wall between us and Mexico, another example
It
of
keeps them out.
making a very clear demarcation of which side belongs to who. So as we keep learning about these countries after World War II, what are some more takeaways that we're seeing all these kind of patterns emerge. So we've got walls and barriers, that's definitely a pretty big one, right? Or dividing countries up. What other sort of themes are we observing in Korea and in other countries?
They're just saying they're splitting apart because of certain like political reason.
Because of ideas, right? Remember that game we played in class and the idea was spreading around and you had to try to find who started it? Ideas spread quickly. So another kind of theme I want you to take away from this post-World War II era is the idea that communism and democracy are really going to start to clash. We've got a lot of countries, a lot of leaders from Mao to Ho Chi Minh who are really going to support the idea of communism. And we've got other countries like the United States, Great Britain, who are really going to try to bolster democracy. And all these new baby countries that are coming up everywhere, they want them to be a democracy. So that's a great one. Really nice. What other themes are we maybe seeing?
They go to war because they don't like what's happening.
Yeah, and the United Nations really said, okay, we're gonna try as much as we can just to have peace, let's just talk about it. But a lot of times we end up going back to war anyway.
And they want the other country to do their system of government.
Mm-hmm. Trying to get them on your side. All right. Well, that is all the time we have for today. I hope that you got something out of this lesson, that you can continue to think about it and go back through your notes. Look at all your outlines. They're pretty similar because we are seeing a lot of the same things happen in these different countries. But thank you so much, everybody, for being so awesome and participating. You're fantastic. And I will see you all again super soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Welcome. Bye, you guys.
Thank you.
You're welcome.